What if the moment that changes your entire life is the moment you finally realize how little you actually know about the world? Welcome, welcome, welcome back to my show, where we explore the questions that crack us open, the experiences that reshape us, and the curiosity that keeps us learning long after school ends. Today's conversation comes from talking to somebody who has, quite frankly, been labeled a problem kid when they were in school to becoming a traveler, a learner, and a relentless seeker of perspective. We're going to talk to him about saying yes, sometimes recklessly, sometimes bravely, and how that led him across the United States with his wife in a school bus into the heart of Nicaragua, all the way to Southeast Asia, and straight into the kind of self discovery you just can't get from a textbook. Hopefully, we hear about how travel has shattered assumptions we all make, how mentorship can change the trajectory of a person's life, and how curiosity, real lived curiosity, can turn life inside out. So let's settle in, let's travel, and let's keep that question in mind. How little do we actually know about the world?
Welcome. You are listening to I Have Questions with Michael Ruland.
Have you ever asked a question, been in a classroom, been curious, or ever wanted to teach and learn? Then you're in the right place. Because I have questions. I am very passionate about being curious, about being educated, and most importantly, about having questions. Join me on this journey as I share stories, talk to some fun and inspiring people, gain insights to being a better teacher, better student, and maybe even a better human. I am very passionate about being curious, about being educated, and most importantly, about having questions. I hope you're ready because
I have questions. All right, troops, as promised, a guest. And again, like always, I know you like guests because you hate listening to my gravelly voice. Today's guest is someone that I have known for 20 years now. 20 years. I met him in 2006. He was a freshman in high school. He was a pain in the ass. Apparently, if you're a pain in the ass, I glom onto you, I think. He has done something that I think most people would love to do, and that is he saved up his shekels and set up his life and quit everything for a few years and traveled the country and the world. And that's quite frankly what I want to talk to him about today. I want to live vicariously through him. And the other fact you need to know about him is, as a freshman, he learned how to make sour cream raisin pie. I don't know if he remembers that.
I do remember your birthday pie.
He made me a birthday pie.
I'd still talk about
Oh my
that.
God. That's awesome. So let's just get on with it. I want to introduce everybody to Corey Watts. Corey, how the heck are you?
I am doing fantastic, sir. It's been a wild ride and a fun few years. Coming back to reality is a bit of a trip. A little bit interesting.
We're going to find out why you came back to reality here in a little bit. All right, brother, are you ready?
Ready to go.
All right, I'm glad you are, because you know what?
I have questions.
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 I pity the fool that doesn't have questions, which I do.
So, Corey, as I brought up, you have done something that I know a lot of people dream about, and that is, quite frankly, turning in the daily grind and making travel and experience part of your life. So, can you just give us all a quick little overview on what made you decide to do that, and then just a little bit about your travels?
Yeah. I kind of knew it was always something that I wanted to do. Kind of just like traveling in the back of my head was always something that very much intrigued me and very much made me want to get out and see the world. And I was always kind of a wild child, always kind of searching for the extremes, what kind of crazy stuff I could get myself into. And it kind of just, as I'd done things in my life, it kind of just evolved into me being like, this is the next step for me. This is the next thing, is that I'm going to, like you kind of said, design my life in a way that I could take off an extended period of time and just go wherever my heart felt like I needed to go. And, with my wife in tow. And it was fantastic. And, we were able to, during COVID, we saved up a bunch of money. And, once me and my wife had a point one night where we were just like, this isn't it. Like, we're not happy in what we're doing. We're not fulfilled. We want to do something else. And so we decided that, the whole buying the house, white picket fence kind of idealism wasn't exactly what we wanted in that point in time. And so we saved up our money, and then we quit our jobs, and we built out a van and drove around in a van for 3 months across the United States until we realized that we were both 6 foot and a van is not the the move. So we bought a little miniature school bus, and then we lived in the miniature school bus for 3.5 years. And just cruised around and spent 4 months in Southeast Asia, and 2.5 months in Central America, and just kind of roamed around and saw as much as I could.
Yeah, awesome. When you did that, I applauded. Actually, I think if I remember right, I got to see your bus before you built it out.
Yes.
Yeah, you just picked it up. You got it on the Cadillac converter special. If I remember right.
Absolutely. Yep.
Oh gosh, that's
I actually
awesome.
just sold it too.
Did you?
Yep. Yeah.
With it as a mobile home type thing, or did you strip it out?
I'd completely gutted it because I'd lived up at Snoqualmie Pass with it for like a winter and a half, and just because it wasn't really built out for being like a winter rig, it gets a lot of condensation inside, so everything kind of got musty. So my plan was to rebuild it, and then so I tore everything out, and then plans of course changed and life changed, so then it was just an empty shell. And all the hard stuff had already been done. So I was like, just put it up on Marketplace. And I was like, hey, whoever wants it, here's a perfect, canvas for somebody to build their own thing and go out. And it sold. And there's now another couple living in it, driving around the United States with it right now.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So as you're kind of telling that story and talking about it, and I know now you're back in Western Washington doing your thing, but as you think about your whole life and the arc of it so far, is there a theme that you think describes you that you think is important?
Yeah, I mean, kind of just following the beat of your own drum, and doing what's true to you and what really makes you happy is something that I've always kind of strived for. In that sense, is like, I'm not one of those people who can just sit down and live a life that's not what I want. My life is always, I've spent a lot of time creating my life the way that it is, so that I can go out and do the things that I want to do. I don't have kids on purpose. I don't have a house on purpose. Like I didn't even have a car payment until this year. I've never, bought a vehicle until now. And so it's like all of these things allowed me to have the freedom to go out and do what I wanted. And that was kind of my whole goal. My whole life was chasing this feeling of intense freedom and being able to do whatever I wanted at any point in time.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah, that's awesome. I love that. So I know this is digging into a little bit of our personal conversations and some things that I've picked up from you. But at one point, you mentioned you were in Central America for a while, but you said, you said at some point in Nicaragua, I think, that you realized that you really knew very little about the world, and that your time there kind of changed everything for you. Can you explain that to me and everybody else?
Yeah, I mean, going out, it was my first. I mean, everybody does the Mexico, your Canada, your little easy trips just out of the country. And, you might go spend a weekend in Cabo, or you might go spend a weekend up in Victoria or whatever. And they're fantastic and they're great experiences, and everybody should absolutely travel. But going to a third world country that's outside of anything that you've ever experienced, and especially with a country like Nicaragua, which has had a lot of bad blood and influence with America, and realizing that all of the kind of things that you're taught in school didn't exactly go down the way that they said they did in the history books. So then, to get to see that, and just also see what, how the rest of the world lives when we live in such a privileged society, in such a privileged country, this existence, 90% of the world does not live the way that Western countries do. And seeing that really opened my eyes. And it was, it took being down there and seeing that there's other ways that life works. There's other ways that countries and societies can flourish and or just exist. It's such a wild experience, because when you realize that not everything has to be the 9-to-5 grind, not everything has to be that way, that it kind of opens up your whole world to realizing that what you've experienced and where you are is such a very small part of the entirety of this human civilization and what we do. It's crazy. It is such an eye-opening experience. And, I think it's something around 40 to 60% of the world lives on less than $1 a day. And, once you begin to see that, and you see what living on such small amounts of capital can do, and how people still survive, and how people still flourish and have, a life and a family, and are extremely happy, which is something that you wouldn't expect. You think of a third world country, you think of it being poor and sad and all that, and it's not. Like, these people get around and have a great life with so much less than America and so much less than Western countries. And when you kind of take that in and, mull around on it, it's really hard to be sad as a person coming from the Western world, to be like, wow, like, I have opportunity out the wazoo. I have so much, such a different life, and I have so much opportunity and so many things that are all at your fingertips that other people don't have. And so when you realize how lucky you are, it really changes your whole outlook and perception on life for that sense.
Yeah. I lived a very similar experience, actually. In the late 80s, I went to Honduras with the National Guard.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
During, as a matter of fact, the Honduras-Nicaraguan War, when those two countries were at war. And exactly like you just, I was a farm boy from North Dakota who hadn't left North Dakota, really.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was eye-opening to see exactly what you're talking about. And so, and true, all of it is exactly spot on. It's funny how almost 40 years later, it's the same experience.
Yeah.
That you had, that I had, right? So as you're traveling around and meeting new people and the whole thing, something that I would love to say I instilled in my kids, you being one of them, but I doubt it's true. I can tell myself this, but you say yes to people a lot.
Yeah.
Like,
to a fault.
You just say, right? You say yes. Let's do it. I think that's maybe why we get along. We just are like, I don't care about what the end result is. I just want to say yes and see what happens.
Exactly.
How has your, we'll call it ability, I think, your superpower to say yes, how has that reshaped your worldview and opportunities that you have encountered?
I mean, it's crazy, because I very much, before I started traveling, I lived, even though I still was my wild, crazy self, I didn't engage as much in just opportunity seizing and, being able to jump at anything that turned at me. And it was because I had things that, like I was renting, I had, jobs, all that stuff, which limited my ability to say yes and just be open to things. So when I started traveling, I met somebody who's a very good friend of ours now, him and his girlfriend. He was pretty much 18 years old and jumped on a super yacht and started traveling the world that way. And that's who me and Laura ended up going to Nicaragua with. And I sold him my van and then bought the school bus. And so one day he was like, hey, let's link up, let's meet up. And I was like, we had never met. This kid's from New Zealand, and so we met up and we hung out for like a week and a half. And then we parted our ways, and he looks at me and goes, I'm going to Nicaragua in like 2 months. You should come with. And I was like, oh, wow. I've always wanted to get out of the country. That sounds fantastic, So then we did. And that kind of spurred the whole just saying yes to every crazy, wild opportunity that I could. And, he helped show me that it's like, that is what's going to give you your wildest experiences, the craziest stories, the funnest experiences, is just being open and willing. Like, obviously being smart, having your wits about you while you do it, but making sure that you're making the most of these experiences. You're saying yes when those opportunities arise, because you may never get that opportunity again. And a lot of people will never get that opportunity in their entire life. And so don't waste it, don't squander those opportunities. And some of the most amazing, crazy things in my life have happened just from simply saying yes to people and going in full bore. Like, that's the thing, is like, if you're going to live this lifestyle and do this thing, you can't dip a toe in. You got to head dive into that pool, And so that really, it just kind of shaped everything. And, now still in my life, it has taught me that like, these opportunities come out of nowhere, and you should just be willing to accept them if everything feels right and it works out. And B, you're going to get such a deeper experience out of life, out of putting yourself in maybe what some could consider uncomfortable situations.
Yeah.
But it all pans out to be a great story and just a great experience, and helps mold you as a person, take you out of your comfort zone a little bit, and which I think is very important.
Yeah. Awesome. So how did all this travel? I guess let's set this up a little better. All of us coming out of high school have a goal, and then when we hit 21, we probably have new goals, and then we meet a significant other, and we set new goals. How did your travel time and exposure to different cultures shift any of those goals that you might have set for yourself? And do you have any new goals moving forward that at one point in life you would have been like, yeah, that's not even a goal I'm going to think about?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's traveling kind of definitely shifted everything in my life, to new goals, and really just like what's important to me, and what makes my heart happy, and what makes me want to get out and do things. And I would say, when I was 18, it was okay, get out of my mom's house and go live an adult life, which I did. And then it was move and make friends and do all those things, which all just keep adding on. And then it just came to a point where I knew that traveling was something that I wanted to do, and that was going, and that I had no idea the impact that it was going to have on my life. I just thought that going out and seeing the world was a cool thing to do. And then, going out and doing it, it completely rearranged my entire thought process, my outlook on life, just everything. Going, like we had spoken about earlier, going and seeing, like horrible poverty and things like that, and just like realizing how lucky I am, and seeing opportunities that I had squandered, and looked back on myself and kicked myself in the butt for it, being like, wow, like, you have no reason and no excuse to have wasted such amazing opportunities or points of time in your life. And so once I was able to kind of grasp that, like, wow, just being born in America and being born in a Western world, I'm one of the luckiest people on the face of the planet. And I have 2 working arms and 2 working legs, and that allows me to make money and walk upright and do the things. And it just taught me that anything was achievable. Whatever I wanted to do, it kind of just opened the floodgates for it. It was, where do I want to go from here? And then that has, shifted into my life now, where, I was 6 months ago, I was swinging hammers in construction, and I was just sitting there, and I was like, there's got to be a better way.
Yeah.
I want out. I still had, the blue collar trades and industry in my back pocket. And so I just started applying around for jobs, and then ended up in a position that's now a hybrid position. And my end goal for that was to go from being a blue collar worker where you have to go swing a hammer all day, to working in a scenario where, okay, I'm no longer being as physical, so I can do the things that I want to do. I can go hiking after work.
Yeah.
I can go, do these things and not be sore and tired. And then, that turned into, if later on down the road I'm learning these skills now, but my end goal is finding a remote position, because once I do that, then I can go wherever and do whatever I want. And that's kind of my end goal, is working my way towards that.
Cool. And then you can go ride your dirt bike 100 miles because you're crazy still.
Exactly. As I was doing that, I was just, please don't break my wrists. I can break a leg, just not my wrists. I got to be able to
Yes.
type.
Yes. Now instead of swinging a hammer, you got to use a mouse and a typewriter or a keyboard.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's awesome, right? I think that's the thing about goals that I wanted to touch on today is I don't know that it's always about setting a specific goal. It's about learning that your goals can absolutely change and broaden, isn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's the thing. I mean, when pre-COVID, during the time that, we were saving up money, we had no expectation that we were going to go travel. It was kind of, our life was getting to this dull point where we just didn't know what we wanted to do. And I was making really good money at that point in my life. And I was able to put a lot away, but it was just like, there was no drive, there was no nothing there, and it made me want to find something else that made life exciting again, and then when me and my wife just both decided that it was time for us to do something different, because my expectation was like, okay, well, I'm saving up a bunch of money, so I'm going to buy a house, right? Like, that's what you do. And so then we were just talking, we're like, this isn't what we want to do. We're not ready for that yet. We're not ready for settling down, and I don't want to be here for forever and live in this, existence and just do what we were doing. And so, going out and, not even knowing that traveling was what we wanted to do, like internationally at all. Like, when I guess COVID kind of set everything in motion, but we actually had tickets to go to Southeast Asia, and we were going to, after we decided we wanted to travel, we bought tickets to Southeast Asia, and then COVID happened. And it stopped the whole world. And so our tickets got canceled. We couldn't leave. And so, what were we going to do was, what we were trying to figure out. And so me and Laura were just like, well, we have this van. Let's build out the van and start traveling, So like, just being able to roll with the punches and go with the flow and still find achievable and attainable goals that are making you happy and making you more well-rounded person, and seeing experiences. And I mean, even all of the international travel is fantastic and amazing, but I didn't even think of, because I've been around the US before, but going and doing it to that extensive level was just as beautiful as any other place in the world. And I think people kind of overlook that when they think of travel. They're just like, oh, we all want to go to Thailand or we want to go to Mexico, instead of just being like, go look at your own backyard. Like, it's insane. I mean, America is a massive continent with every expansive type of ecosystem and geology. It is so crazy. We're so lucky and blessed to be able to live here. And just, I encourage everybody to go experience that, and see it. Take a road trip once in your life. Drive across the United States. You get to see how amazing the United States really is. It's truly impressive.
Yeah, it's funny you say that. I've recently been watching or following on social media these two guys from England, from Britain, and they come over to the United States, and what you're saying is what they're saying. They're like, oh my God, America, do you understand what you have? They just go to what I think we would deem this mundane. Oh, I know about that area, and they just can't even believe it. It's really, watching them has really made me kind of stop and go, yeah, right. Like I live a mile from Snoqualmie Falls, and but I take it for granted, I think, because it's like, it's the falls. What do you want from me?
Yep, absolutely.
But like you're saying, it is amazing. It's drop dead gorgeous. It's the history of it, and if you take some time and learn the Native American side of Snoqualmie Falls, it's education in its rawest and best form, quite frankly.
Well, exactly. Like, we don't think about it, but it's like, this area has been populated for 10,000, 14,000 years. Like, we actively find artifacts in our, like around where we live all the time. Like, the archaeology here is thriving because of these communities that lived here before we did. And it's very much looked over in, our society, just as much like, the Native American culture, just as much as everything else around us. Like, it is, we all take it for granted so much, but we're not the first people to be here, by any means. And B, seeing that, society has thrived in these areas for tens of thousands of years is crazy. And, getting to see it firsthand and, understand how these people lived with lived with nature and lived inside of these areas, and how they interacted with their ecosystem is incredible.
Yeah. Oh, so you're right. It's Sarah and I went to Europe a couple years ago and loved it, right? And I'm like, "Oh my God, this is amazing." And at the same time, I was thinking, it's a river. We're on the Rhine, and we've got rivers. And someday I should do a boat tour up the Mississippi or something, right?
Absolutely.
It'd be just as cool. So, all right, I'm going to switch topics on you here, my friend, mostly because, as people obviously figured out, you were a student of mine. You were a pain in the ass. Because of you, I have a gigantic Buddha tattoo on my arm.
And probably a few gray hairs.
A few gray hairs. But in the same breath, as I think people can also figure out, is, I loved every minute of it, and as you shared, you're staying with a buddy of yours right now who filled your bucket of being a part of a gray hair in my head as well. Kyle can claim a gray hair for me too.
Absolutely.
I want to switch this a little bit to education a little bit. And I mean, you lived it, I've lived it, and I've preached it forever. But what is something you wish not just every teacher, but every person, because like I've run into people that say kids these days, right? And I'm like, no, it's not kids these days. Kids are kids. And it's the same thing. Every generation says that about the kids in their generation, right? So, what's one thing that you kind of wished people knew about so-called problem kids, right?
Yeah.
The ones who march to a different drum, to be frank.
I mean, yeah, one thing I think of, of that topic is that, during our experience together, how I was, and, I might have been a handful here at times, and it was very much a response to the way that I was feeling due to my circumstances, and so that a lot of people looked at me and thought that, in a lot of schooling and, different examples like that, you're supposed to fit a criteria. You're supposed to fit a rubric, which I didn't by any sense of that. And a lot of that may have been willfully. A lot of that may have just been, me not actually fitting into where the standardization that is expected. And so, that it was hard, growing up, because there was a lot of being written off as a kind of a lost cause in that sense by some people, that I was just, going to be the problem child, and that was it, and there was nothing that anybody was going to do to change that. And experience, it kind of, me and my personality, I love a good challenge. So anytime somebody felt that way, or I felt that coming from somebody, my mentality was just prove them wrong. Whether that be a good or a bad thing. It was okay if you want to say I'm acting a certain way, I'll act 10 times that. Let's do it. Let's push it to the extremes always. And so that was something that meeting somebody like you and having such a positive interaction with somebody while being written off by tons of other people and just being told that I was a bad kid and that, I was doing all these things wrong. But then having somebody that was a friend, not only were you a mentor and my teacher, like you were a friend, and a friend that I needed at that point in time. I needed somebody who would believe in me, and I needed somebody who was going to steer me in the right direction and not do it from an extremely bossy and authoritative point. You never treated me like I was a kid. You treated me like I was a young adult, and you laid out in front of me, here are your opportunities. You go down path A. This is what's going to happen. You go down path B. This is what's going to happen, and choose as you will. And I feel like a lot of that, just having those real conversations with people, especially people who feel misunderstood and might be considered problem children in that realm, it makes a big difference for somebody to have a person that actually looks at them and recognizes them as an individual, and that that has the ability to change their life and do amazing things. And that kind of just wrapped up into my whole life, really. Like, thank you for that. Like, being, the mentor that you were literally helped shape the trajectory of my life, for me knowing that it's like I can do whatever I want. I have the ability.
Yeah.
I am smart enough. I am talented enough to do whatever I want to do. And all it took was just somebody to help coach me along the way, which I feel like you did a great job of, in our time together, and has significantly impacted my life for the better.
Wow. Well, thank you. That's cool. Well, I do remember we talked you into taking Miyoshi's class your senior year. Do you remember that?
Yep. Oh, yeah.
Yep.
Yep.
I think that's probably what set you up to do your current job now with computers and keyboarding and management, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, 100%.
That might have been the longest semester of my life, and you weren't even my student.
Right. Yep. I was never known for being an easy one. That's for sure.
No, but your mom got you through. She,
Yes,
after,
she
I don't
did.
know if you even know this, after you graduated, she used to still stop at my table during parent teacher conferences just to say hi. Cause she and I talked so much about you. She felt like we needed to keep going.
That sounds very par for the course for Cheryl.
Yeah, it's your mom.
Yeah.
And then were they your niece and nephew or cousins?
Yes, my niece and nephew.
Niece and nephew. Then they came through, and so then I got to see your mom again for real. So it was very cool. So cool. Well, all right, my man. We're going to change the questions now. So now it's the curious questions, and you can answer in one word or a sentence or a paragraph, whatever floats your boat, my friend. All right. And there's 5 of them. They're easy. One of them you've already lived, but hopefully you can come up with another answer. So, all right. First one, favorite holiday.
Ooh, Halloween.
Halloween. Awesome. A place. Okay. I think you'll be really good at this question. A place where you absolutely need to visit in the next 10 years.
That me personally or the people listening? Me personally? Okay.
No, you want to
South
visit.
America. That's my next goal. South America. I want to see the Amazon, so that's my goal.
Awesome. The Amazon scares me. I won't lie. But
yep,
I want to
scares me too.
I want to see Patagonia.
Yes.
That's a place that I think would be really like spectacular.
Yeah, that's on my hit list as well. Just doing the entirety of South America.
Yeah, awesome. I'll come with. Laura won't mind. Right?
Let's do it. Not at all.
All right, a time period. So this isn't a place. A time period in history or the future that you would like to visit one day.
I mean, I think I would like to go into the past, and I would like to go to when Angkor Wat was being built in Cambodia.
Good call. So you saw that, right, when you were back there?
Yes. Yep. I did a sunrise and a sunset there, and I spent 3 weeks in the city of Siem Reap outside of Angkor Wat, and just got to travel around Angkor Wat and experience all of that history. It was fantastic. It was incredible.
I hate you. I'm so jealous. It's not even funny. That is so cool. All right. Favorite book that you have ever read?
Prisoners of Geography.
Geez, way to think about it. Wow. That one's right there. Prisoners of Geography, people. There you go. And then finally, one food that makes you think of home.
One food that makes me think of home.
Yep.
God, I would have to say there's a Watts family staple that is a ridiculous comfort food. That is spaghetti noodles, fried egg, and diced up little Smokies. As strange as that sounds, it is the poorest, most comfort food you can imagine, but that is just a family staple of mine.
That, by the way, is exactly why I asked that question. Because, right, it's not about the food that we love or have to have. It's what brings us comfort in our minds. And quite frankly, I think usually it is some kind of crazy conglomeration of foods. And yeah. And I this one covers crazy conglomeration. So good job.
Absolutely.
All right, brother, we're about at the end. So your turn. The show is yours. 1, did I miss something? Or is there anything you would like to add? Or do you have a question for me?
Yeah. I would like to know from your perspective what it was like dealing with me in my hardened times as a student of yours.
Well, as you may or may not remember, you guys were my first class ever. That was my first year teaching, but I had been at Cedar Crest for 3 years prior to that, so I knew the things. I also had coached your older brother in baseball that year before, right? So I knew your story a little bit coming into it. And if you also remember, your whole class there were more of you, there were more kids like you in your class than not like you, right?
Yes.
Yeah. I earned my keep that first year. No, you know what? I say this a lot and too much probably, and people get tired of me saying it. But the fact is this, you guys reminded me of me in school, to be honest. I was perfectly capable at being a good student.
Mm-hmm.
But I chose not to be for 100 reasons, right? For 100 reasons. And so I think, to be frank with you, it was almost more of a comfort zone issue where I'm like, oh yeah, I get it. I've lived that. I understand the theory here. The fact is I had to weigh every day today, because let's be honest, every day I had to yell at you guys for something.
Yep.
Right. But I had to weigh, is today a day that I'm going with the soft, they clearly need a soft touch today, or do they need the drill sergeant touch today? And,
Absolutely.
right. And I don't know whether I don't even care, to be frank, if I'm old school or new school or what that sounds like, but everybody I think needs both of those, right. And I think that was the problem, was which approach should I be taking today? And of course, because there was so many of you, you all kind of needed a different approach every day. So it was zero to do with math, to be honest. I mean, I was brand new teacher, so I was like, it's about the math, but I knew better. I knew it was about creating that connection that you guys would start believing the words that I was telling you about math. And it was a little tougher with you guys at first, but I think I can very solidly and accurately say that it made the deepest connections too.
100%. Right? Absolutely.
Here we are chatting. And I mean, your guys' group, I still follow and keep in touch with so many of you guys. And it's probably because we went through so much in that damn portable.
Yeah. If those walls could talk, oh gosh.
Those walls could talk, right? So I don't know. I didn't find it hard, to be honest with you. I found it really invigorating, actually. How's that for an answer? And because of you specifically, I at one point in my life had Buddhas from all over the world in my classroom. Do you remember that?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. You rubbed my belly before a test one day. I almost punched you in the face. I still have that Buddha with the globe above his head.
Oh, that's awesome.
That you bought. Oh yeah.
That's fantastic.
So I don't think teaching you was difficult. It was memorable, and I had to pay attention. But I can't complain. You used to bring me McDonald's if I turned a blind eye to you being late. Remember?
Hey, right? You got to pay the toll.
So no, I miss teaching. I really do. And I've always said that, even when I became an assistant principal, because of the really tight connections you can make. Yeah. So I don't know if that answered your question very much, but I do stumble along with my answers. So, all right. I'm also going to point out to all 6 of my followers that it was nice of Corey to put a painting I made for him front and center the whole time.
Oh, this hangs there 24/7. This has been in every house that I've ever lived in. This was in my school bus and drove around the country with me. Yep, I had it up on the walls of my school bus and drove all around the country with it.
I think you asked me for a car on a drive or something, and I'm like, I don't paint cars. What is wrong with you? And so I managed to make a landscape scene with just the very front end of an old car. So
Here we can pan into it. There you go, sir.
The shadows worked out really well.
Yes, they did.
Yeah. So anyway, yeah, I thought I'd point that out since you've been very stylistic with your camera there. So, all right, my friend, I'm going to ask you one last question, and then holy smokes, then I better let you go. This is a long chat. What is one little piece of advice you would give a brand new teacher?
The one piece of advice that I would give a brand new teacher is, make those connections that you were talking about, like I was that kid that kind of was, at some points felt like a lost cause and was told by other teachers that I was, that. And it took somebody like you to come in and, create a friendship, a relationship, also a mentorship. You were still a mentor and still very much a teacher and an authoritative figure, but you were a friend and you cared. And that was one of the most important points of my entire high school experience, was having you, and having this relationship that not only were you the teacher that would help me with whatever I needed, you were there to talk, you were there to listen, and, you were there for my good days, you were there for my bad days, you were there for all of it. And just being kind of that shoulder to lean on and, knowing that I could have open dialogue with you and tell you how I was feeling, and, having somebody that like you that was just supportive of me, when I'd caused enough ruckus to be kind of written off by a lot of other people, that, it really did make the difference. So I would say for those new teachers that are out there, making those connections where needed is extremely important. And don't give up on the tough ones, even though we might have been a pain in your butt, you and what you did has literally shaped my entire life. It's kind of wild how I look back on it now and realize how much of what I've done comes from people like you believing in me and just saying that anything you want to do is achievable. Exactly like you said it earlier. I was perfectly capable of being a good student. I just kind of chose not to. And, making sure that we're not writing these people off just because they seem like a tough cookie to crack, is important, and just giving a little bit extra grace and time where needed, I think is incredibly important for students like that and people like myself who were in positions where we may have been a little bit disenfranchised, whether that was our own doing or, just the way the world worked. But yeah, that is something I would say is very, very important for new teachers.
Awesome. Well, you are too kind, sir. And that is great advice to a new teacher. So thank you for sharing that. So, all right, my friend, I need you to tell your family, I could say your two brothers and mom, but there's more to that family that know me. So tell your family that I send my love.
I will.
Go up and tell Kyle that I love following and creeping on his family. And I hope you continue to stay out of trouble. And when you hit the Amazon, I'll be there in spirit for sure. So
I'll bring you something back. Don't worry. We'll find something. We'll see. Find something cool for you.
Awesome. All right, Corey Watts, thank you so much for doing this. And we will talk soon.
My pleasure, sir. Have a great day.
Thank you, Corey. That was great catching up and talking about traveling. I miss traveling. Sarah and I, that is on our list of things to continue doing hopefully as soon as I get a little better. Speaking of getting a little better, a little long COVID information time. Clearly nothing new with me. It's still a thing. I still take a few days before a known event and rest up, and then a couple days after that event to recover. It's almost like more work to prepare sometimes than it is to actually do the events, but still a thing, still plugging along, and here we go. So anyway, all right. Well, thank you so much for joining me on this little journey. It's not a huge travel journey, but it's still journeys and travels maybe. This is a journey, though, to be curious and ask questions. And I'd love for you to be curious and ask questions and touch base with me. I have an email. I have questions 2025 touch base with me. If you want to be on the show, I would love to hear from you. I'm willing and able to talk to anybody. I love talking to anybody. So I hope you have a good week. I hope you get curious. And I believe most importantly, I hope you ask questions. So, oh wait, P.S. So I was doing some reading up on Nicaragua and saw that, of course, it's home to the Aztecs. And, one of the many amazing Aztec finds is actually the city of Tenochtitlan. It was, I'm sure I said that wrong, but that's what I got. Tenochtitlan was one of the most astonishing cities in the world for its time. It was built on an island in the middle of Lake Texcoco, home to hundreds of thousands of people and the beating heart of the Aztec Empire. It's actually a perfect example of how curiosity, engineering, environment, belief, and possibility can actually shape an entire civilization. Just imagine approaching Tenochtitlan in the early 1500s. This is a city that was literally one of the largest urban cities in the world at that time, beating London and Paris and Rome. And you'd see a shimmering city rising up out of the water, connected to the mainland by long causeways and crisscrossed with canals that functioned as streets. Think of Venice. At its height, the city held 200 to 400,000 residents. The origin story of Tenochtitlan, oh, amazing. It's really a story that grew from curiosity that guided destiny. According to Aztec mythology, the Mexica people wandered for generations. Following signs from their god, they were told to build their city where they found an eagle perched on a cactus, devouring a snake. Well, this happens to still be the symbol at the center of Mexico's flag. When they finally saw that sign, that symbol, it was on Lake Texcoco. They didn't turn away from the challenge of building on water. They actually leaned into it. Even after its destruction in 1521 during the Spanish conquest, the legacy of Tenochtitlan lives on beneath modern Mexico City. Tenochtitlan invites us to stay curious, to look at the world not as it is, but as it could be, to imagine cities on lakes, temples that touch the skies, and societies that were built on just bold questions. And maybe that's the real lesson, that curiosity isn't just about seeking answers. It's about building cities and worlds. Peace, love, R. This has been a production of SMEB LC Enterprises. Please give us a thumbs up, share us with others, and come back next week for another leg of our journey. Thank you for spending some of your valuable time and energy with us today. This is also a great time to reach out to someone in your life and just ask them, how are you doing? Don't wait. And remember, I have questions.